think the challenges that women are having in Kenya in entrepreneurship are an uneven playing ground in the business ecosystem, and the perception that only soft jobs belong to women, jobs like catering and decor.
Financial institutions especially will not take women seriously.
Lack of access to funding.
As well as lack of business support. A lot of women go into business without the proper knowledge on how to run a business.
A system that still doesn't believe fully in women, and lack of guarantors and collateral, because for collateral, women need property, and properties are mostly registered in men's names or jointly. So a woman cannot just independently pick up property and use it to access credit.
Women entrepreneurs lack the risk appetite that their male counterparts have. So you see the males, applying for all sorts of fellowships, all sorts of funding opportunities, while we sit back because we are not sure of the risk involved with it.
The requirements are too many and too long. They feel they are inadequate, so they shy away from applying for any funding.
Hello and welcome to episode 2 of the She's Next series, in conversation with Visa, Standard Bank and African Women Impact Fund. Now, this series is focused on African women fund managers and expounds on the partnership between Standard Bank and Visa and its goals around the She's Next Sub-Saharan Africa grant. Now, as we shift gears in our conversation, we look to get into the details about the fund and, of course, touch on other themes related to women fund managers. Now, in this series, we also plan to explore the barriers and challenges that are faced by women fund managers. However, our intention is always to source solutions through these conversations, which are being led by women for women entrepreneurs. I'm still joined in studio by my two guests to give us some insight into much more of the details that we shared with you on episode 1, where we understood the clarity of the barriers to entry, the challenges that are often faced regarding technology and financing, which might lack in the ecosystems to support women fund managers. However, I'm still joined by Aida Dayara, Senior Vice President and Group Country Manager for Sub-Saharan Africa at Visa, and of course still joined by Lindeka, Global Markets Head of Strategic Partnerships at Standard Bank. Now, we really set the tone in terms of episode 1 in understanding some of the challenges that exist, but as mentioned, we're looking to source solutions here. And what I find so intriguing about not only this particular partnership, but even the ecosystem from a global point of view, is the fact that women-led businesses continue to remain resilient even through tough economic times. However, we've also experienced the pandemic. 2020 was a tough year for everyone within the entrepreneurial space, never mind women fund managers themselves, who perhaps might have seen not only a decline in the kind of capital they're able to manage and control and invest, but even in terms of their operational capacities and efficiencies. I'm hoping that you can give us some context and perspective here as to how this dynamic of women-led businesses in Sub-Saharan Africa, still lagging behind their male counterparts, and of course then waned even further by the challenge of the pandemic. What impact has that had on, again, the efforts to increase and improve women-led businesses across the continent? Aida?
Sure, and maybe I can share a little bit of what we've seen, because we've spent a lot of time surveying, speaking to small businesses during the pandemic, and understanding the impact it has had on their operations. And certainly they've been deeply affected, with people simply not being able to go at point of sale during the lockdown. And what we've seen for the SME segment altogether is compounded when it comes to women.
Ooh.
Yeah. What is quite interesting is that Africa is one of the continents where women entrepreneurs are the largest when it comes to the ratio between men and women. Mm-hmm. When you compare Africa to any other continent, you have close to 60% of women starting, small businesses or micro businesses. Mm-hmm. So whatever happens to them is all the more important, given the role that they play, supporting families, creating jobs and whatnot. So what we've seen in terms of some of these gaps that we observe is, number one, I keep coming back to access to technology. Yeah. And what I mean by that is that the companies, the small businesses that were the most resilient during the pandemic were the ones that quickly pivoted to offer their operations digitally and to accept payment digitally. You know, think of your restaurant, think of even retailers that were able to go online, offer their operations, were able to expand access to consumers and therefore be a little bit more resilient. And we found out that if you take, some of the basics, tools like a phone, women have less access to phone than men. When you look at access to the internet, they have less access to the internet than men.
Sure.
So already from that angle, there is a gap that we need to solve for. Lindeka is going to be more eloquent than myself when it comes to having access to finances. But here again, we've seen that they go, first of all, there is packaging your information in a way that is compelling to banks or financial institution. That is a challenge.
So you need to go with the right information, not just requesting a begging bowl and saying, Lindeka, help a sister out here. And that also underscores another disparity that we see within the market where, again, more men in the economy actually tend to have bank accounts versus women, which plays an influence, I guess, then as to how they're able to access and absorb those finances, Lindeka.
And collateral.
Yes, collateral.
That's another thing. Since we still have, I mean, just thinking about where we've been in terms of our call to action campaign, where we had less women coming through in North Africa, for example. And this is where women, even at work, they're still talking about people at work being able to hold roles there. Women having to have collateral. When you go to a bank and you're looking for a loan, they don't own it. Your husband does. So these are the things that we're all mindful of. So you want to look at the small businesses, which Aida has given us numbers that are out there. Women are the biggest employers in this SMME sector in terms of growth. And now you actually also, the focus has been in finding in the microfinance space, where what we're trying to seek is actually bring women to the macro level where they can actually manage money at scale. And you know that if you are a woman and you're talking to businesses, you already have a gender lens. In that oftentimes when you walk into a meeting, you'll be the only one who will notice that you're the only one there, the endangered species, and there's just men around you. So you apply that gender lens, and we want to make sure then from our end is that what capacity do we actually provide for these women? There's a funding part of it.
Yes.
We have to be deliberate in terms of keeping their businesses alive, help them fundraise, and provide technical support. So there's a lot that we need, and I think partnerships with Visa bring us both what we're best at, so that we can combine those solutions and actually be intentional in terms of what we provide to the women that we're looking to support.
What other shifts do we need to see? What other roles can big corporates play in shifting this landscape to the cultural understanding and even bringing men onto this agenda to say, hold on, broaden the landscape and view things with a gender lens?
I'll start and then I'm sure you'll have plenty to say.
I was actually thinking about our story.
Tell us
How
about
we
your
met.
story.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a story?
I think that's a great start. So
We were
please.
just remembering a conversation where we had with some of our male counterparts who were like, what is the problem?
Oh,
Yes. So I guess what is important is that not only did we meet during the pandemic, it's the first time we're meeting in person, but we're intentional that we're actually going to find ways to make this work, because the solutions are there, but it deserves people like us who actually understand what the challenge is. We are those women.
then how did you get your male counterparts to understand the challenge and actually assist you in deriving the solutions we're talking about today?
Data, data, data.
Yes,
Powerful. Numbers are powerful.
Absolutely.
numbers
And
never lie.
the more you show the contribution of women into the economy, the more you talk about the resilience, the more you talk about the gaps. Yeah. Then you begin to raise awareness and create a sense of urgency.
Yeah.
That is so critical. And, when we looked at the work that, if you take the example of Visa, we pledge to, digitally include 50 million small businesses But then we realized that we needed to be a little bit more intentional about women specifically.
One of the things you were talking about was the impact if we leave women behind. You're talking about half the population, right? It has a huge impact on our GDP. So that's not a nice to have problem. We're not talking about something that we have to do in terms of from a moral standpoint. This is an economic value in terms of what we need to do here. And I think what's critical genuinely is creating that visibility that we all need, because as Ida said, businesses firstly that didn't have technology disappeared.
Yes.
Because you have to be online. And if you didn't have that, you became even more invisible for women. So that visibility is crucial. Second part of it is that the solutions that we're actually looking to provide must speak to the problems that women have. And this is where for us it's no longer just about raising money for them to manage, but it's also by making sure that we walk their journey. What is the technical support we're providing? What is the operational support we're providing? What are the networking opportunities that we provide? Because when Ida started, sure there was no one around here on the table, same for me, and we learned from each other. And also, how did you navigate the space? And we can actually now also point each other to initiatives like this one that will help solve for the challenges that we face.
The challenge many entrepreneurs face, though, is that essentially you're building something from the ground up and looking to scale and develop it, unlike being a professional working for a well-regarded institution that is known the world over and is easy to get backing. Help us distill this myth of backing the horse instead of the jockey when it comes to women fund managers, Lindeka, and how that perception needs to change.
It is funny because we were talking about Delphine's story. She was a successful portfolio manager at Allen Gray before she started a business. But it seems that once the perspective shifts, once you're on your own, as if you've left all your skills where you were. So it's actually backing the institution versus backing the person making the financial decisions, the investment decisions, and that's critical. And that goes again to changing the narrative. But away from that, I think some of the stuff that is critical for us is that we're not talking about women only in the fund management space. We're talking about women businesses and entrepreneurs across. And I think one of the things that we've been doing within the bank is have programs that speak to this. I know in Zambia, for example, we have Anakazi that delivers tools that women need for their businesses. We have Dada in Kenya. It's a platform that actually gives women financial support and also non-financial support. We've worked with the UN in the agri-space with women across Uganda, South Africa, Nigeria, Malawi. So you have to be intentional and you actually have to speak to the problem. And oftentimes you also have to measure what you're doing. I think that's going to be critical. This is going to allow us to measure our impact.
And before we actually do wrap up this conversation to sidestep into episode 3 in a moment, I'm keen to understand if we do see that multiplier effect, that the more Lindekas I see, the more Aidas I see, the more Gugus I see, is there then increased momentum for collaboration, for partnerships, and most importantly, new opportunities for new and younger entrepreneurs to also step into that particular space?
For me, the answer is a big yes.
Yeah.
Just indicating to other women that it is possible.
Yes.
And for me, it goes a long way. It goes a long way. And then from there, making sure that there is this community of women coming together, sharing best practices, supporting each other is just second to none. Yeah.
When you're sitting in the room, you're quite aware if you're the only one there. And we always say when you go up, lift another one with you. And I think that's critical in terms of making the changes. And I think also in terms of the spaces where we sit within our normal roles in our various institutions, it is one of those things where you're actually mindful to make sure that more women are coming up the ranks and actually are becoming more visible. But for me, it's also bring our organizations to the party.
Yes.
Because there's no little blue people at Standard Bank or blue people at Visa. It is Ida, it is Lindeka who will say, there's an opportunity for us to work together here and we can do X. What does Visa bring? What does Standard Bank bring? How do we collaboratively bring our resources together where we actually want to achieve impact, where we are aligned in terms of purpose and drive and passion?
Yeah. Well, we're looking forward to hearing more about that, the practicalities of implementing that drive and passion and seeing more developments of programs of this nature. Thanks again for your contribution
you,
to this
Zuzu.
conversation. And of course, thank you for joining us and listening in. Do stay with us though, because we will be following up with episode 3 of the She's Next series, where we are in conversation with Visa, Standard Bank and African Women Impact Fund. Now stay with us, because in our next video and finally in episode 3, we will ensure that we not only continue to source solutions to the challenges that women face within the fund management space, but most importantly, unpacking further details as to how Standard Bank, together with Visa, have practical solutions that they continue to apply in order to leverage and even out the landscape. Until then, it's goodbye for now.